Welcome back to War Thunder. Welcome to the tank review on the M46 Patton and its premium counterpart, the M46 Tiger. Both have a battle rating of 7.0, however they have different tiers. Whereas the tech tree version comes after the M26 Pershing, the M46 is at rank 5, whereas the M46 Tiger is at rank 4. Currently we have a 5-tier system, and with the upcoming patch we will receive a tier 6. That means also that it will be possible and very likely that we will see also tier 5 premium tanks. The M46 Tiger then might go up to rank 5, and the reason for that being that it has a buffed heat shell at its disposal together with the tech tree version. I will let you know everything that is important to know about this tank. We'll compare it to its major opponents on the battlefield, give you a full rundown on the statistics together with some ace tanker gameplay in the background. So let's begin. As usual, I will begin with the armor. We can see that the lower plate is just 76.2mm thick. The middle part is angled at 53 degrees, so around about 150mm, with where on the outer edges it's a bit flatter with just 28 degrees of sloping, so under 100mm of effective thickness. Upper plate 101.6mm thick, so that means it's safe from the 90mm. It's not quite sure if this is safe from the 90mm hash shell as well, because it's cast homogeneous armor. I was hit numerous times by RE251s with that heat shell, with that hash shell, and nothing happened. So I'm not quite sure what's going on. Technically, it should penetrate. Practically, it never has happened to me. The constructional sloping looks not all that bad with 46 degrees, but the effective thickness is not strong enough to, for example, hold back a Russian 85mm gun, for example, of the T-44. That machine gun port is a prominent weak spot, and it's flat with effective thickness of 103mm. The machine gun itself is even weaker. Then we have the here this top part, which is just 22.2mm thick. So that means splash of high caliber HE shells can go through. So we're talking about 120, 122 and so on millimeters of caliber with HE shell. They might splash down. The side of the hull is not that bad, but also not impressive by itself. 76.2mm. That's just below, for example, the Russian T-54s, or I think just a bit above the Russian T-44-100 without the side skirts. The rear, where the engine is just 50.8mm. So this is the area where certain AAAs might be able to now penetrate you. The rear is as well 50.8, with this being 22.2. The engine deck, again, 22.2. That still is vulnerable to rockets, and it's not the smallest targets. Then the turret. The turret is a bit weird, and there is one significant difference between the tech tree version and the premium version. Here you can see, when we go into modifications, a short glimpse, we have this add-on armor. It is a tier 4 upgrade, and when you remove it, wait a second, it looks just like the normal premium, or the premium version. Is it useful? Well, it depends. I guess it's useful against hash, but then that's about it. So without this, the vehicle looks much smaller. By the way, this tiger emblem here is coming with the premium vehicle by itself, and the turret, the gun mantle, is not that impressive. It's rounded a bit, as you can see, and it has a bit of overlay, but overall here right next to the gun it's 114.3mm. So technically even a Panzer IV can go through. With the overlay we can see that where the turret effectiveness or the armor effectiveness of the turret is impressive as well, you also have an overlay but that doesn't help you when somebody shoots you in the flat part, on both sides, by the way. Then also the frame around the gun mantle is 101 millimeters thick. Here, right next to when you miss the gun mantle, so to speak, it's 124 millimeters thick. So yeah, it's a chancy shot here. It's safer to shoot the gun mantle right in the middle. Then the side of the turret as well as the rear is 76.2 millimeters, much like the side armor, and the rear is that thick as well. Top of the turret 25.4 millimeters, a bit thicker, but not too it will not save you from direct rocket hits either. With the upcoming patch we see a change in the rocket explosion mechanic. The front part is 101 millimeters of the front, and we also can see the cupola. However, those chance it's 76.2 millimeters thick, and the constructional armor sloping is 61 degrees, so I would not recommend going for that. It's not a really prominent and useful weak spot. So we also have on the side those structural steel chassis, again, that will save you against hash. We also have those additional tracks, but nothing too serious. The armor overall is not too impressive. And on the top of the head of the Tiger, the armor gets even less angled with 25 degrees. So this tank does not really shine through armor. What about the X-ray? Well, we can see that we have 5 crew members. We have a machine gunner and the driver in the front of the vehicle to the left and to the right. Then we also have the loader and the gunner together with the commander sitting on the left side of the turret. We also have a 10 round M rack here next to the gun, so I would highly advise you to take out 9 rounds of your total ammunition count or even more. And yeah, that's it. And the rest of the ammo rack lies behind the relatively weak lower glacis. So aim deep. And there is a part where you can penetrate this tank with solid AP, more or less on the top of the vehicle, so just under the turret, where solid shots will do absolutely no damage. Then we have the engine together with the radiators, the fuel tanks, and the transmission sitting in the rear as a big block. Then we also have this 90mm gun and not that small breech. So that's it with the tank. You can see the crew compartment is not that cramped, but it's certainly not big as, for example, on a King Tiger. The armor is not too impressive, especially when we later will compare it to its 7.0 rivals. So then let's get on with certain other aspects of the tank statistics. Let's talk about the mobility, and we can see that the M46 Tiger and as well the normal Tech 3 version have the same stats, and I just feature here the Tiger. So the premium version, and it has the second strongest engine after the Panther II with 810 horsepower. However, when it comes to the weight, it's not the lightest with 43.8 tons. The specific horsepower to ton ratio again is just second to the Panther II with 18.5, and you really feel that. It also feels like the tank has good ground resistance stats, or low ground pressure, so that means it can move around and turn really nice together with neutral steering. The top speed is again not too bad with 40-70 kilometers an hour, but it's not outstanding. Sometimes under certain circumstances in the long run you really feel that the engine could do more, but you're limited to the top speed. The Panther II and both the Panther II and the T-44-100, however, cannot that often exploit their top speed just under the best of circumstances. And with keeping it in mind that you are always relatively close to your top speed, you really can't complain about it. And the reverse speed again is just second to, in this comparison, the IS-6. So amongst the medium tanks it is one of the faster in reverse, and again that benefits the maneuverability greatly. So the mobility, the maneuverability is really nothing too bad, and you might be forgiven to think that it kind of plays in the light tank role with that, more in the light tank role than in the brawling medium tank role, like for example the T-44-100 or to a certain degree the Panther II. Next part is about the firepower, and this is where this tank is not that special when it comes down to the pure gun handling stats. It's certainly not bad, but we are on the lower region when it comes to the pure caliber of this M3 190mm gun. We have a huge amount of shells, 70. Remember, take roughly about 10 of them out and you can take 60 with you without increasing the chance of your MREG detonating by too much in comparison to other tanks. The reload, however, is where this tank lets you down a little bit. 9.1 seconds. That is, you know, quite a bit. For example, when we compare it to the Type 61, it's nearly 1.5 seconds longer on as well a 90mm gun. The Vickers MBT with its really fast firing 105 L7A1 gun fires every 5 seconds for an A screw, and even the Panther II fires every 8.5 seconds. Just the Russians here in this comparison have a longer reload, but they have other benefits when it comes to the overall armor, protection and the firepower itself, especially the stock firepower. Then the turret rotation speed is, together with the Type 61, the fastest, and 24.0 is really nothing to be ashamed of. And the gun depression as well is with -10 degrees, again together with the Type 61, a second to none. The gun elevation, nice 20 degrees, and the elevation speed is throughout all the mentioned tanks the same with 4 degrees. So overall, I really think that you're let down by your reload rate compared to the caliber and what you have to fire at the enemy. The first shell type that I want to present you is the M318 shot, which is a pure AP shot. It features 192mm of penetration, has a muzzle velocity of 853 meters per second, which is not the fastest for this 11 kilogram heavy warhead, and this is the stock shell for the Tech 3 version, the M46. I have to quickly say this about this tank: it has overall 7 shell types, of which 4 are not that useful. The second shell type is the M71 shell, which is a high explosive shell, 11 kilogram heavy warhead, 823 meters per second muzzle velocity, 925 grams of TNT equivalent, 13 millimeters of penetration, not very useful, again on the rather useless side of ammunition. The very first researchable shell is the M82 shot, which is an APCBC/APHE shell. Everybody knows how much I really like APHE, however at battle rating 7.0 you are a bit let down by the 170 millimeters of penetration, but it is very good against enemies from the side. So usually when you penetrate, you usually one-shot your opponents with that, because you have 137.2 grams of TNT equivalent. But this is the very useful shell type due to its damage output. After the really useful APHE shells, there are now in consecutive order in terms of research 2 APCR shells, of which the later one, the M332 shot, features a penetration of 271. That's around about the penetration value of the German Long 88's APCR. And the muzzle velocity is higher as on the first APCR with 1178 meters per second. I think APCR is currently not very useful. Hopefully this gets changed at some point in the future, because the majority of your opponents have either flat armor that you can penetrate with the stock shell, for example King Tigers, or they have sloped armor, which the APCR does even worse than the AP or the APHE shell when it comes to angles around about 50-60 degrees. I don't like them, they are not very useful, but you have to research them to get to the last final very, very useful shell that makes the difference between this tank and the M26. And that is the heat shell, or rather the HEATFS shell on this tank, the M348. It features now, after a really massive buff of 95mm, a penetration of 305mm. However, it is not as fast as the newer guns, the newer 90mm, because it still has a muzzle velocity of 853 meters per second. However, it features a TNT equivalent of 926.17 grams. That means also it very often initiates hull break on really low armored AAA vehicles, Russian AAA trucks, and certain other AAA vehicles. So that is rather good. So the best recommendation for using this tank is situational. For frontal attacks, use the HEATFS shell, and for side shots, use the APHE shells. Every tank that has the combination of APHE and HEATFS has a very good ammunition loadout and can change it when the situation requires it. The last shell type is, like the HEATFS shell, a tier 4 upgrade, the M313 smoke shell. Unlike the HEATFS shell, it doesn't require consecutive research of 2 useless shells before that, or rather useless shells, so you can directly go for it when you have rank 4 unlocked in terms of upgrades. Is it worth it? Well, to make it short, yes and no. You can smoke up friendly tanks, you can smoke up locations where enemy tanks are usually sniping from, but for yourself, well, it's not that really impressive, and you should avoid, you know, hiding in that smoke yourself, as it gives away the position or the area of your presence in the first place. So think about this. But it's not useless, and I further have to go into smoking tactics to give you a really heads up on how to use the smoke shells most effectively. I think one of the biggest drawbacks of this smoke shell is the long reload that it requires for the gun to get out the next shot. So let's sum up this tank. It has very good mobility. The armor is not that convincing. Hell, certain AAA vehicles can challenge you from the front or shot trap you or something like that. Your reload is held back. You have an awful stock run when it comes to the ammunition, which there are 2 ways to deal with it. First of all, you skip that tank, but then you have to deal with the M47, which is not better in terms of stock run, hell, even worse when you think about it. And you can then think about either buying the HEATFS shell with gold, or you go for the way that many British players do it with their AP shots. They up-tier their tanks when they have already 8.0 tanks to specifically hunt leopards. And this leads always to the saying that German tankers are so bad with their leopards, but nobody really mentions that they get specifically hunted for the cheap RP, so to speak. Because leopards, you can easily one-shot them through the not very good armor and through the very prominent ammo rack detonation. So then let's get on with some gameplay. So here on the Stalingrad map, I am picking a very unusual approach to the combat zone, and I try to avoid the direct head-on against my opponents, and I'm not even quite sure if I have German tanks or Russian tanks to face. However, as you can see in the ammunition loadout, I have around about 22 heat shells, and it might be a bit more or less for you, and 13 APHE shells, and also around about 10 smoke shells. Most of the time I do not even use the smoke shell at all. And I try to drive through the factory buildings, and you can see the mobility of the tank is not all that bad if I just could avoid driving into walls and something like that. To hit the enemy from a location where he doesn't expect it is always a beneficial part about a tank, and the combination of good horsepower to ton ratio with what feels like low ground pressure and good maneuverability, neutral steering and all that, and a good reverse gear just gives you the essential tools for performing in that matter. And also the tank has quite some good acceleration. The gun handling, again, it doesn't have a stabilizer. The long reload for the rather low penetration gun, as long as you don't feature the HEATFS shell, is something that you always have to keep in your mind. And that, again, then leads to the question, is the tank worth it? Well, currently, for pure grinding purposes, it is much cheaper to put a talisman on the regular tech tree version, and also therefore accelerate the unlocking of the modules and also the researching of the M47 Patton 2. However, you don't get the additional silver line bonus income. However, for that, I always recommend flying planes. And there I would switch to an APHE shell, but he bails out before that. The heat shell is always a little bit of a gambling, whether the MRAC detonates or you fully damage it, whether you take out enough crew, and also the reloads. If you have a bad crew and the enemy has a very good crew, he might just get in that gunner again before you could take the next shot, and you would die from that. And that is always a very frustrating part about a tank, especially a medium tank. I also have to mention the 50 cal on the top of the tank that helps you to spot enemies for the rest of your team, to challenge aircraft if they are too reckless with their low flying. And yeah, you might also consider to take off the tiger emblem, as it further gives away your position, and maybe to put on bushes if you have access to them. Notice that, by the way, I shot with the 50 cal the fence before I pulled the trigger, so the fence fell off and the heat shell could directly go into the IS-6. Now I set him off for the second time, and I have noticed that I took out his gunner, and with the third heat shell through the front of the tank, I take out the driver and the loader, fully killing the tank. Then I spot an enemy behind me. It's a Type 65 AAA, one of the reward vehicles. I know I can rush him. He doesn't have the best ammo belt anymore after the very quick nerf of this vehicle. And now it serves best as a real AAA vehicle and not a tank hunting tool. Then I hear an aircraft, and it's a PE-8, and I see the massive 5,000 kilogram bomb being dropped into the cap, but I was too far away to even get marked, I guess. And so I tried to swoop around the corner with my front facing towards the AAA. And he gets a shot off, but he does not even hit me. I blow up the ammunition, and that's another kill. So far, so good. And then I get shot, and for whatever bizarre reason, this IS-1 didn't really hit me. Then you can see the HEATFS shell was absorbed by the track leading wheel, if that's the correct term to use. And now I try to side grab. Against an 85mm gun, this might be possible. He rushes the shot, I take my time, aim the APHE shell through the side of the vehicle, and get my fourth kill. And further advancing. Now, it's always difficult to not overextend, to end up in a hopeless situation where you get shot by multiple tanks from multiple directions, which would be a quick ending to your journey. So this is where I just simply park behind this house, try to listen, wait for some teammates, maybe support them, but they get their way themselves. At this point, there are not too many enemy tanks left. It was so far a relatively quick battle, but I'm not done yet. And I try to put myself into the way of possible enemy reinforcements. And there is quite an air battle going on, and I'm hopelessly bad with my 50 cal leading skills lately. And that's why I missed every shot. Now this is also dangerous business, as the 50 cal hammering is quite a unique sound, and also the tracers would lead back to my position. Remember kids, tracers work both ways. I tried to hit that IL-10 I guess in the air, but I just missed by just a bit. Also this Russian P47 is something that I completely miss, so shame to my AAA skills, and I try to further advance. Now at this moment I'm not quite sure what to do, and you can see I'm hesitating to fully advance. I'm looking around. Normally this is the point in time where somebody comes from behind and hits me. I hear an engine somewhere, and again I use the trick of hitting both fences with the 50 cal so that they fall over, not triggering the heat shell with the relatively sensitive fuse. And again I wait. This is not a very good brawler. Most of the time when facing tanks of your battle rating or even slightly lower, your armor is not too convincing. You might bounce some lucky shots that hit the edges of your tank, or when they are not having enough caliber to interact with your armor good enough, 30% interaction rule here, then the shell might not penetrate at very drastic angles. Now I thought I'd have waited enough, and I tried to push the spawn, let's put it that way. There is nothing inside. I look to my right, nothing there, and then I see an enemy tank, shoot over the fence again and hit him. I take out the loader. Now that's not much use to me. The tank doesn't burn, and he seems to have spotted me. He gets boned by aircraft, but not seriously damaged I guess, and he moves on. And I'm just waiting here. And this is a dangerous game, because Russian vehicles and German vehicles with their APHE shells usually need one shell. That's all it takes to kill you through the front of the tank, without aiming too much. Just the big target zone of the front plate is enough to mostly guarantee a one-shot kill. Then I go around the corner, and there he is again. And I kill him by killing now the gunner and the driver. And that's my ace. And the rest of the match is basically spawn camping. Now let's quickly recap what I did in this battle so far. I went in the long route, on an unexpected route, to surprise the enemy from behind. I usually also aim for the turret shots for the gun breach to hunt them down, because most of the time they can't repair in time, so I can very easily make the finishing shot with the APHE shell. The tank moves on, the ASU 85, and I get a lucky tracking shot, and he seems to have taken the auto running mode, so to speak, because he turns over the track, and another HEATFS shell into the sides gives me the kill by ammunition detonation. So switching to an APHE shell would have been better, but I did not expect him to rotate over that one damaged track. So yeah, but I got the kill with the HEATFS shell anyways. So quickly, let's recap. Take the unusual route. When you have the tank from the side, either go for the M rack or aim for the gun breach and then switch to APHE. Then always reposition yourself, use your great mobility and maneuverability to catch the next enemy off guard as well, lay ambushes, take your time, and you know, please keep in mind you don't have a stabilizer, you don't have the fastest reloads, and despite having 5 crew members, you don't have the survivability nor the armor to take a shot. So that's it for this battle. Let's have a quick look at the post-battle results. And a quick word here, you might wait for, I guess, October, where there are 50% discount on the majority of premium vehicles. You might also wait for the next patch, where it then comes to the New Era 6. Maybe this tank gets into New Era 6, which would give it more value in terms of grinding potential for tier 5 and tier 6. This battle I also get my M46 Patton Ace Tankman 2 and lovely 77,000 silver lines and 8100 research points. So that's it for me today. Thanks for watching, thanks for listening. Please give this video a like if you did, subscribe if you want to see more. Let me know your experiences of playing with the M46 Patton and against it. And we will see each other on the battlefields and in the skies of War Thunder.